It was late at night when Marcus spotted her. A frail, elderly woman in a faded dress, shuffling along the side of a dark road. Something wasn't right. Marcus slowed his car and pulled over. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he called out, stepping into the cool night air. The woman turned toward him, her eyes clouded with confusion. I don't know where I am," she murmured, her voice trembling. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. She looked lost, really lost, and alone. "I'm here to help," he said gently, approaching her. "Do you remember your name? Or where you live?" She shook her head, clutching her sweater tightly around her shoulders. I can't think." Her words hit him hard. This wasn't just someone who'd taken a wrong turn. This was something deeper. Dementia, maybe. Whatever it was, she couldn't find her way back on her own. Marcus glanced at his watch. He was already running late getting home to his daughter, Lily, who was staying with a neighbor. But he couldn't leave this woman here, not like this. "Let's figure this out together," he told her firmly, guiding her to his car. As they drove through the quiet streets, Marcus tried everything he could think of to jog her memory. Street names, landmarks, even old songs on the radio. But nothing clicked. Hours passed, and frustration began to creep in. Every minute spent searching meant less time with Lily, less sleep before another grueling day of work. But then Marcus reminded himself, what if this were his mom, his daughter? Wouldn't he want someone to stop and help? Finally, after what felt like forever, they found a clue that led them closer to her home, and to the family desperate to find her. What Marcus didn't know was that helping this stranger would change his life forever. Marcus knew he couldn't just leave the woman alone. Not in this state. But every second spent searching for her home meant more time away from Lily, who was waiting for him at their neighbor's house. His phone buzzed repeatedly. Texts from the babysitter asking when he'd be back. Each message made his chest tighten. He hated being late, especially when it came to his daughter. "I'm sorry," he muttered under his breath, ignoring the texts as he focused on the road ahead. The woman sat quietly in the passenger seat, occasionally mumbling fragments of memories that didn't quite add up. "There used to be a bakery on the corner," she said once, pointing vaguely toward a row of closed shops. Marcus drove slowly, scanning the area. No bakery, just empty storefronts and flickering streetlights. He called the local police, describing the situation. "We'll send someone out," they promised, but it would take time. Until then, it was up to him to keep her safe. Fatigue weighed heavily on Marcus. It had already been a long day, 2 jobs, barely enough sleep, and now this. His stomach growled, reminding him he hadn't eaten since breakfast. But stopping for food wasn't an option. As he glanced at the woman, he thought about Lily. She was only 8, but she understood their struggles better than most kids her age. She never complained when dinner was instant noodles or when birthdays were celebrated with handmade cards instead of presents. "She deserves so much more," Marcus whispered to himself. But tonight, he reminded himself of something else. So did this woman. Whoever she was, wherever she came from, she mattered. Her family was probably frantic, searching for her just like he'd search for Lily if the roles were reversed. Finally, after hours of driving and calling around, Marcus spotted a familiar street name the woman had mentioned earlier. Pulling over, he helped her out of the car. "This looks familiar," she said softly, gripping his arm. Relief washed over him. For the first time all night, they were close. What Marcus didn't realize yet was that his kindness wouldn't just reunite this woman with her family. It would also open doors he never imagined possible. The house was modest but warm, its windows glowing softly in the night. Marcus helped the woman up the driveway, his heart pounding as he rang the doorbell. Seconds later, the door flew open. A middle-aged man stood there, his face pale with worry, until he saw her. "Mom!" he exclaimed, rushing forward to embrace her. Behind him, a woman appeared, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God! We've been looking everywhere for you!" she cried, wrapping her arms around the elderly woman. Marcus stepped back, watching the reunion unfold. The relief in their voices, the way they clung to her. It was everything he'd hoped for. "Thank you," the man said, turning to Marcus. "You brought her home." "It was nothing," Marcus replied quickly, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Just doing what anyone would do." But the man shook his head firmly. Not everyone would have stopped. Not everyone would have stayed with her until she was safe. The woman joined them, still holding her mother's hand. "We're so grateful. Please come inside. Let us at least offer you something. A drink, food." Marcus hesitated. He was exhausted, hungry, and eager to get back to Lily. But something about their gratitude made him nod. Inside, the house smelled like fresh coffee and baked goods. Photos lined the walls, family portraits, vacations, birthdays. It was a stark contrast to Marcus's tiny apartment, where bills piled up faster than smiles. As they sat around the kitchen table, the conversation turned to Marcus. "You must have kids of your own," the woman said gently. "One," Marcus admitted. "A daughter. She's 8. She's lucky to have you," the man added, studying Marcus's worn-out clothes and tired eyes. "You clearly care deeply about others, even strangers." Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just did what I thought was right." The couple exchanged a glance, their expressions softening further. "We'd like to repay you somehow," the woman said after a pause, "for everything you've done tonight." "No, please," Marcus protested. "I don't need anything." But they weren't taking no for an answer. "We'll talk soon," the man promised, handing Marcus a business card. "In the meantime, thank you again for giving us our mom back." As Marcus drove away, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Something told him this family had more in mind, and whatever it was, it might change everything. Days later, Marcus received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a handwritten note and an invitation to visit the family again. "Please come," the note read. "We'd like to thank you properly." Marcus hesitated. He didn't feel comfortable accepting anything from them. He'd only done what he thought was right. But curiosity got the better of him, and he agreed to stop by after work. When he arrived, the same warm welcome greeted him. The man, Daniel, and his wife ushered him into the living room, where coffee and snacks were laid out on the table. "We've been talking about you," Daniel began, his tone serious but kind, "about how much your actions meant to us." "It wasn't a big deal," Marcus insisted, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "It was to us," Daniel countered firmly. "You gave us back our mom, and we want to give something back to you." Before Marcus could protest, Daniel handed him another envelope. "What's this?" Marcus asked, frowning. "Open it," Daniel urged. Inside were papers detailing a trust fund set up in Marcus's name and his daughter Lily's. It included enough money to cover her education, along with monthly support to ease some of Marcus's financial burdens. Marcus stared at the documents, stunned. I can't accept this," he stammered. "This is too much." "You can," Daniel said firmly. "And you will. You deserve it." Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes as the weight of their generosity sank in. For years, he'd struggled to make ends meet, always putting Lily's needs ahead of his own dreams. Now, suddenly, the future felt less daunting. "But why?" Marcus asked hoarsely. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because you reminded us what really matters," Daniel replied. "Kindness, sacrifice, family. Those are values we want to pass on to our kids and to the world." His wife nodded, adding softly, "You helped us when we needed it most. Let us help you now." Marcus couldn't find the words to respond. All he could do was nod, overwhelmed by their compassion. As he left the house that evening, clutching the envelope tightly, he realized something profound. Sometimes, helping others doesn't just change their lives. It changes yours too. For the first time in years, Marcus allowed himself to feel hopeful. Hopeful for Lily's future, hopeful for his own, and hopeful that one day, he'd be able to pay forward the incredible gift he'd just received. With the financial burden lifted, Marcus finally had room to breathe. For the first time in years, he wasn't constantly juggling bills or working double shifts just to keep the lights on. He could focus on being present, for Lily, for himself, and for others who needed help. Lily noticed the change immediately. "Dad, you're home early," she exclaimed one evening, her face lighting up as he walked through the door. "I am," Marcus replied, pulling her into a hug. "And I'll be home even more often now." Her smile said it all. But Marcus didn't stop there. Inspired by the kindness shown to him, he began volunteering at a local community center that supported struggling families. At first, it was small things, helping organize food drives, mentoring kids after school. But soon, he became a pillar of the neighborhood. One day, while leading a workshop on budgeting for single parents, Marcus shared his story. "I know what it's like to feel stuck," he told the group. "Like no matter how hard you try, you can't get ahead. But I also know this: one act of kindness can change everything. Someone helped me when I needed it most. And now, I want to pay it forward." The room fell silent, everyone moved by his words. Afterward, a young mother approached him, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "I needed to hear that today." Marcus smiled, remembering how Daniel's family had made him feel the same way. As weeks turned into months, Marcus found joy in helping others navigate their struggles. He started a program called Pathways to Hope, offering resources and guidance to families facing hardships similar to his own. Through it all, Lily remained his guiding light. She thrived in school, excelling in subjects she'd once struggled with thanks to the tutoring funded by the trust fund. Watching her succeed filled Marcus with pride and gratitude. "You've done so much for me, Dad," Lily said one evening as they sat together under the stars. "I want to do big things too, just like you." Marcus chuckled, ruffling her hair. "You already are, kiddo, just by being you." In those quiet moments, Marcus realized something profound. The gift he'd received wasn't just about money. It was about hope. Hope that no matter how tough life got, there were always people willing to lend a hand. And now, he was one of those people. Years passed, and Marcus became a beacon of hope in his community. The Pathways to Hope program grew beyond what he'd ever imagined, helping hundreds of families break free from cycles of poverty and struggle. One evening, as Marcus stood at the front of a packed auditorium, addressing a crowd of volunteers, donors, and participants, he reflected on how far he'd come. "I used to think I was alone," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "That no one cared about people like me. People working 2 jobs just to keep their heads above water. But then someone proved me wrong. A stranger helped my family when we needed it most. And now, I'm here to tell you that kindness changes lives." The audience erupted into applause, many nodding in agreement or wiping away tears. Afterward, a young boy approached him shyly, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. "Mr. Marcus," he said hesitantly, "can you help me? My mom works so hard, but we still can't afford school supplies." Marcus knelt down to meet the boy's gaze. "Of course we can," he replied warmly. "And don't worry, we'll make sure your mom knows she's not alone either." As the boy ran off to join his mother, Marcus felt a familiar sense of purpose. He wasn't just helping individuals. He was creating a chain reaction of kindness that would ripple outward, touching countless lives. Later that night, as Marcus tucked Lily into bed, she smiled sleepily. "Dad, do you think Grandma would be proud of us?" Marcus paused, thinking of his late mother who had always taught him to help others. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said softly. "I think she'd be very proud." In the end, Marcus realized that true wealth wasn't measured by money. It was measured by the connections you forged and the lives you touched along the way. And thanks to one selfless act years ago, he had sparked a legacy of hope that would continue for generations to come.